senior kita.
Okay, before we begin, I just need to check whether I'm audible. Can I have a confirmation from the operator?
Yes, you are.
Okay, amazing. All right, everyone, we are going to begin. And just a little reminder before we begin, for everybody in the audience to show your activity, show your support for this event. Be active, ask questions, give comments. It's very much welcome. And it's supposed to be an interactive event with very distinguished speakers. So I'm sure that it will be a very interesting presentation. Right, so I'm just going to confirm also with the operator that everything is all as well with the image on the screen, because I see some black shadows. So we might have to close some of the windows. All good?
All good. It's the Zoom menu up there.
Okay then, yeah. All right, so for everybody in the audience, welcome. And we will start right now with the opening. Good afternoon for everybody in Indonesia. It's 43 minutes past 1 right now. and good afternoon, good morning, sorry, to everyone in Poland. I think it's 45 minutes or 43 minutes past 7 a.m. right now. So good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to Ecco Idea International Debate on Environmental Action, presented by the Ecco Foundation, Youth Ecco Foundation Indonesia, and the YCC or Youth Climate Council in Poland. We are so delighted to be here with you today. And on behalf of Ecco as the founder, I extend my gratitude to everybody in the audience, to our speakers, distinguished speakers here today, to the committee from E2DC of Undikma or Universitas Pendidikan Mandalika. Everybody in the committee has worked very hard to make this happen. I also extend my gratitude to everyone in Ecco, our officers, my fellow co-founder, and all our Ecco ambassadors who have helped to make this happen. So why did we do this Ecco Idea project? To give a little introduction, this is a joint collaboration between Ecco Foundation, of course, the YCC, that began with a little conversation between me and Julia Galosh in a plane ride one day when we were in Europe. And we decided that there needs to be a collaboration between our two organizations. And where would we have this? We did not really know. We thought maybe in Poland, maybe in Indonesia, whichever comes first, but we'd love to have an event together to work towards climate change education and real action. And thus, suddenly we had this opportunity, and Julia flew all the way from Poland to our tiny island here in Lombok for some research. And we had the opportunity to have a seminar, a real live offline seminar with Julia this morning, which was really, really an awesome opportunity. And it feels so surreal to have her here with us. We had such a great offline session this morning with Julia as one of the speakers who talked about biodiversity, and Sri Trisna Dewi, or Tiwi, my great friend and colleague from the Uitul Kaihatsu Labo Foundation, and she presented about mangrove education. Now for today, we have two sessions or two individual presentations from our distinguished speakers. And I here as moderator would love to introduce them. However, before we begin, just a little rules of this seminar that we probably already know. First things first, again, everybody is very encouraged to participate, give comments and questions, etc. However, to make this event run in an orderly fashion, I would like to remind everyone in the audience to please make use of the chat section for any questions so it's easier for us to convey it. Or later during the Q&A, you are very welcome to show your hand, raise your hand, use that emoticon button, or unmute yourself just to say if you have a question, right? And then make the questions as brief as possible, because we don't have that much time, unfortunately, and we would love to hear your ideas, okay? Right. And there you can see on the screen my brief introduction. I'm as the founder of Youth Ecco Foundation. I am also a climate literacy activist and Intibis Scholarship Awardee for a master's degree at Nicolaus Copernicus University. I'm an English teacher. I am also a debate coach and accredited adjudicator for high school and varsity level. I was also given the great pleasure of being the moderator of the Global Electromobility Forum in 2021, and I have once achieved Best Speaker for JCI UN National Debate 2017. It's a little weird to introduce myself here in front of you, but yes, thank you for showing that on screen for Iqbal. Right on, but I would like to go on to the introduction for our distinguished speakers. So first things first, I would like to read the impressive bio of Miss Veronika Gajda. So as you can see on the screen, she's a member of the Polish Youth Climate Council. And this is a unit that's directly under the Ministry of Climate in Poland. Very cool, very prestigious, guys. And it's a pleasure to have her speak for us. Second of all, she is a social media climate change activist. So this is really interesting, how to use social media, how to use tools such as Instagram and Facebook, everything for climate change mitigation. And we are going to hear from her about this in a second. She's also a psychology student at Pedagogical University Krakow. And to hear the psychological aspects, the nuances of this in her presentation is going to also be very interesting, because we need to find a way to make it the most effective way to convey climate change issues to the audience by knowing about the psychological aspect. And here she is a master's degree candidate as well. So you can see that during her BA program, she has done so many things, and she is also yet to receive a master's degree. So very, very great example of the youth climate activist over here from Weronika Gaida. So we'll see her presentation, which will be shown to you in the form of a video. Unfortunately, she cannot make it here live, but she has prepared for you a very amazing video, and the feedback section later will be responded to by Julia Gawasz. All right, so don't worry, there will still be an interactive section after we see her presentation via video. All right, let's go to the next speaker, which is Adam Blazowski. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But Mr. Adam here has an extensive CV, actually, but we only showed this small portion over here because we want to focus on the areas of him as a smart city engineer. Short quotes, but really big implications, guys. And from him, of course, we are going to listen to the more technological sides of climate change mitigation. He is also a publicist, a climate activist, of course, co-founder of the FOTA for Climate Foundation and Replanet. So not only one organization he works for, but so many. And this comes with more than 15 years of experience, right, in his industry, which is related to technology, IT software engineering, etc. And he has a very extensive professional background. So we're going to listen to his presentation, which will be more about energy efficiency. So for those of you who are, tech lovers, this is going to be a very interesting presentation. I heard from Julia directly, he has prepared an extensive set of slides that's going to, tickle your curiosity about this topic. So those are for the short introductions, very brief introductions about our speakers. And now we will get to their ideas, okay? So without further ado, let's sit back and enjoy the presentation from our first speaker, Ms. Weronika Gaida.
University of Krakow, and I'm also a member of Youth Climate Council. And today I would like to talk a little bit about the influence that mass media has on public view on climate change. And without further ado, I would like to go to our topic and start. Firstly, I would like to start with the current climate situation in scientific eyes. How does it look really by scientists, by people that know a lot about climate? And let's see what newspaper says, like United Nations, what they say, or NASA or IPCC report, they all say that we are on the edge of climate crisis. For the last 50 years, scientists have been alarming us about the consequences of uncontrollable using natural sources, polluting air, water, and ground. Basically using our planet as a disposable, easily replaceable toy. Since 1880, global temperature has risen by 1 degree Celsius. Since 1993, the sea level has increased by almost 20 centimeters. And each year we are on credit with our carbon dioxide emissions. Basically, science is saying that we are at the worst point we have ever been in terms of climate. But also, we are most aware of that topic. We have most knowledge that we ever have. We know that we have a problem and we are taking action. And let's see what image of climate change mass media is showing us. We can see headlines of The Guardian, the New York Times. Every single day, the media are showing us another catastrophe. This week, it is fires in the Czech Republic. Last week, there was a heat wave in Europe. Climate change is a real deal, and it is happening right now. So it should not be a surprise that we have heat waves, floods, or fires. But showing these horrific images is no longer working. Humankind is well known for its ability to adapt. At first, we are shocked, scared, and motivated. After some time, we are getting used to the current situation. And it is happening right now with our view on climate change. Mass media, such as news stations, newspapers, etc., they have one goal, to make us stay with them. They will do everything to make us watch television every evening or buy new issue of their newspaper first things in the morning. People's addictive need to new information is an excellent companion in this war, in this fight for the customer. But we, consumers, have to be very careful of our sources of information, and we should not entirely rely on anyone. In the fake news era, we have to arm ourselves in the lie detector armor, and learning about psychological tricks that the media use on us seems like a kind of good starting point. Before I start with those three effects that I would like to present today, I want to remind you of two effects that are crucial for understanding the world of mass media. The first of them is the third person effect. We usually think that we are better at resisting mass media than most people. It is similar to attribution theory, where individuals perceive everyday situation either as external or internal causes. We need to remember that the media influences all of us, and that we as individuals are not an exception. The second reminder is focused on media creators. We have to remember that news are under the control of minority elite. By owning the media, members of this elite have power over people's opinions and their perception of news. They can shift our view on certain topic if they only want to. So remember to always check information in many different sources. As an example of psychology being used by mass media, we can mention the elaboration likelihood model. This model explains two ways of processing information. We can either process stimulus under a central or peripheral route. If the information comes through the central route, we usually focus on the topic and consider the true merits of the information presented. This route requires motivation and the ability to remain focused on the topic and presented message. The peripheral route is based on cues that are not related to the logical quality of the argument, but are focused on factors such as attractiveness or credibility. While this route is used, individuals are more likely to rely on heuristics, which make it easier to manipulate them. Researchers show that video and audio are more likely to activate peripheral routes than central one, while with the printed word we have the opposite situation. It is crucial to be aware of our own limitations. We will never be able to be focused on every message we received, but we have to be better at assessing the importance of signals. Another important aspect of news is framing. You can simply say the fact, but it will not make your followers interested and they will not come back to you. The media are aware of that, and this is why they are framing when they show us information. If we show people catastrophe after a catastrophe, the next one will not make an impact on their view of the world. And even if it happens, it will make them scared, not in a positive, motivational way. Worth mentioning is also a way news programs are showing us pieces of information that, when presented next to each other, create a picture, a very clear, very obvious picture. Framing is simply a guide that shows us a path that we can walk without letting us make one on our own. We are often in our information bubble. We surround ourselves with people that think similarly to us and that have similar levels of knowledge. There's nothing wrong with that. But in this bubble, we tend to forget that the rest of the world does not have the same knowledge or resources to access that knowledge as we have. The knowledge gap theory is simple. There is a gap that inquires knowledge between people of different socio-economical issues that it's still increasing. So it is crucial for people from all social groups to understand climate change and how to fight it. The paradox is that people with less scientific knowledge are the ones that suffer most because of climate change. We cannot forget about them or even blame them. We should include them because it is also their fight. When new programs or newspapers issues are being created, there are two sides that have to be taken into account: the facts and the conclusion that we want our viewers/readers to have. Agenda setting is a special ability to influence people's point of view by making news high on the public agenda. If our news hits #1 on every TV channel, we basically won. The agenda setting is mainly based on the media's bias, which is the bias of journalists and news producers in the selection of news and stories that are reported and how they are covered. What we see on TV is just a piece of the real world. There are billions of stories that are happening right now that we will never hear about. Media are selecting what we see, and by that, how we perceive the real world. When we talk about mass media coverage of climate change, we can actually divide it into three types of journalists. Factual journalists are often scientists who are spreading their knowledge outside the university walls to a broader audience. Journalists that are not scientists often make errors that are an effect of their lack of specialist education. They are simply specialists in journalism, not climate sciences. In the IPCC report from 2022, we can read that accurate transmission of knowledge is being disturbed mainly by climate change deniers. And keeping that in mind, we have to remember that that it is our responsibility to check every piece of information that we want to pass on. The second type of journalism is based on narration and controversy. Big headlines are selling better than accurate ones. Economics and politics are way less interested to the public than human trials, tragedies, and victories. We want to see personal news, not mass, complex pictures. Newspapers are also keener towards the extreme points of view. If a tree falls, it can be portrayed as the end of the world. Portrayal of risk well beyond the claims actually being made does not work in our mental health favor. If we are terrified of the end of the world, we will not be able to save it. Which leads us to the most extreme type of journalism, alarmism. The inexorable destruction of our planet is on every journal cover, every news website, every news TV program. We are surrounded by the grandiose vision of doom. Using alarming and urging language is actually not making anyone more motivated. We have to protect our mental health by fighting with the information. We can become deniers because the reality shown by the media is just too much for us. We can become paralyzed by fear. We would just freeze. Or we can become apathetic. Our emotion will shut down because of the overload. Overwhelming people with catastrophic visions will most certainly not make them active. We all have a similar goal: to live on a clean planet with fresh air and water that is available to everyone. In this war, we have to unite and keep each other motivated. Hope is our fuel, and without it, we will really be doomed. So if you are an influencer, or you want to become one, or you don't want to, but you want to know how to talk about climate change, you can find here a few tips. Firstly, remember to make others motivate. We cannot lose our hope. We have to keep fighting. This war will last really long, and only on the united front we can win that. Without motivation, there's no action. Secondly, remember to share only verified information. You are responsible for everything you are sharing on the internet. You cannot make others verifying every information they received, but the least you can do is check the news you are sharing. Knowledge is our best weapon, and we should not underestimate it. Lastly, share good practices. We can easily become just feeders of facts, but when we talk about climate change, the core factor is action. You have to know what we do, and you can make the world a bit better if you just show your flatmates, for example, how to segregate waste. I would like to thank you for listening to my short lecture. I wish you all a lot of motivation and hope, and I truly believe in our success. Wish you an amazing day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much to Veronica for preparing that very interesting presentation. And it was very, packed with a lot of details, packed with a lot of actual information, even some philosophy there. And I think it's really based on extensive research from her part. We could also hear some, psychological theory there that was quite interesting for me. And I think that we'll have an interesting discussion after this on these topics. So I would like to invite Julia, the Vice President of YCC, to discuss with us here and also give feedback for anybody who would like to ask about Veronica's presentation. All right, so Julia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Hello, everyone, one more time today. if you have any question about communication and the climate crisis, you can ask right now or in a minute when you'll have some. Naya, would you like to say something more?
Okay, so yes, we've already watched the presentation from Veronica. I don't think I would have any conclusion yet. I would like to listen to the questions and also directly go into the discussion session with you, Julia. But I would like to highlight several parts of the presentation to remind the audience, right? So the first one was about the psychological tricks the media plays. And this is also in relation to how they talk about climate change to people. Also, remember about what psychological effects are used by these mass media, like elaboration was mentioned, framing was mentioned, and this is, I think, quite interesting for our debaters in the audience, and this knowledge gap. Remember also about the types of journalists. We have factual, narrative, and alarmism, which was quite interesting. And also, last of all, good climate change influencer behavior. So how to be a good influencer on climate change. So within this framework, let's talk about your experiences, perhaps. Maybe you can give some comments about your experiences, or maybe you can ask questions about what the YCC does, for example, to promote, climate change. What tactics are used, and maybe what tactics are used by Ecco, right? Or what have you used? This would be interesting. But I would let Julia maybe lead the discussion first with maybe a question for the audience, or we could just directly go to the Q&A. What do you think, Julia?
I would like to add a few things from my side, if I may. Thank you, Naya. I would like to tell you that I really appreciate Veronica's work, because Veronica in YCC is communicating our projects and new informations that we learn during our way. And I really appreciate that, because usually when we think about climate change and about climate crisis that we have to deal with right now, we are thinking about scientists, about engineers that are searching for new solutions. And actually, it's really important part, but also really important part is communicating these new solutions to the society. And communication has to be led in certain way. It's, as Veronica said, it cannot be too scary for people, because right now we are dealing also with climate and anxiety, which is psychologically described as an anxiety because of climate change. And people who have to deal with this kind of anxiety sometimes have additional depression. Sometimes they cannot still work. They cannot work as activists, and it's because of this huge amount of bad news that we can see in media all the time. So that's really important to know how to communicate. And I would like to ask you, because you are working in many different organizations, do you have any experience with communicating not only news or informations connected with climate change, but also with different things? Do you have any, for example, routine that you do? That's a small clue, but do you have any routines that you do usually to keep your followers with you, or or develop your accounts or social media? Do you want to maybe share with me anything?
Okay. So does anyone in the audience have any hosting, social media, content creation experience? If you do, you can raise your hand.
Okay, so if you don't, that's also not a problem, but I thought that maybe you do. But if not, you should remember that it's a powerful tool. You can really keep your followers with you. You can educate people, because when we talk about climate education, we shouldn't talk only about formal education. We should also talk about informal education, which we are doing, for example, right now. We are not, especially not at school, but not on a lesson, but we are learning from each other, and we are getting to know new informations. And it's really important because most of us, after university, after school, for example, adults, we will learn our whole life, but from our colleagues, from our partners, from our kids. Sometimes it's also quite common when you have kids that you are learning from them. So it's really important that you would know how to communicate in the future. Maybe you can be a new famous climate influencer. That's also an idea to educate people. And we need this education to act together to combat climate change. I can see that there are some questions, so maybe we can answer them.
Okay, Julia. So thank you for your suggestion and also this valuable information, advice to everyone in the audience. I will read the questions over here, and Julia, you can help answer. I will also make any additions if I have any, right? Here, number 1 from Hazani Darunafis. Thank you for your question. So it's related to the last slide. Do you think it is okay to create the news that makes society worry or afraid towards climate change? And if I'm not mistaken, this was related to the type of journalism that was more alarming, right? But in order to make a good mindset in society, so that society is aware with climate change, right? So is it okay to do this, to make this kind of content, maybe as a journalist or an influencer, in order to create this awareness? What do you think, Julia?
It's really hard topic and it's really hard question, because most of the informations that we have about climate change right now are not so nice. When you will type into your browser climate change news or anything like that, you will see heat waves, you will see floods, you will see rising water levels, and you won't see so many answers for these challenges that we have. So it's really, that's why I mentioned that I really appreciate Vernika's work, because it's really challenging to create this awareness without scaring people almost to death, because we have to tell the truth, but we have to find a way to tell the truth, so in that way that people are not so scared to stop acting, because it's really easy to make these people thinking, okay, it's too late, we cannot do anything, we should make the situation even worse because we will consume more, and it would be better for us at the moment, but in the future, okay, next generations, either way they cannot make it. We shouldn't do that, because we still have some time, we still can fight, we still can conserve this part of nature and of a planet that we have still, and we have to do everything that we can to do that. And it's really a hard question, because some social media accounts are living from scaring people almost to death, and people still are coming back, and they want more. We like these big informations. If it's a happy information or a bad news, we always like these big things that are happening, because it's interesting for us. We want to hear something like that. Of course, yes, of course, it's hard for us to carry these informations, for example, during the day, during the year, during month. But to conclude, because I lost myself somewhere on the way, because it's quite a complex topic. But to conclude, I think we should tell the truth, and do not lie, because even if the truth is hard it's a hard pill to swallow, we should still know what is going on right now. And it's also about bad news, because usually, as I said, we like big news, so some companies are telling that it's even worse than it is in reality. and some are telling that it's better than it is in reality, and it's not helping one and another situation. So we have to tell the truth, and yeah, and I leave that up to you. If you would like to become an climate influencer, what will you do? But in my opinion, it's only my opinion because it's an ethical, I think, question. We should tell just the truth and educate people, and do not scare them on purpose.
Okay, really good answer, Yulia. Very diplomatic. And I do totally agree with you. Facts should be told, yes, but it's about the packaging, is what I can see here in journalism, right? We don't want it to alarm people. We don't want it to be so that people experience this climate anxiety, this climate depression that, as Yulia told me, is a thing, right? Where she is, the thing that she has noticed. And I don't know of any research specifically here in Indonesia yet, whether or not this depression or climate anxiety has been discussed as much. But I do think, as a climate activist in literacy myself, I do feel this sense of, losing hope sometimes, this, am I doing anything that's going to be worth anything, right? And I've had discussions also with Thiwi, the other speaker today, and she did experience this kind of thing as well. So as a literature also enthusiast here, with my background in literature, I do think that packaging and the language that we use is very important. So tell the facts, maybe seek some attention to get people to read, but there always has to be, some kind of hope there, some kind of action or solution that you still give to the audience. So we have to balance this information, tell them about the facts, but tell them facts about what good people are doing in the world. I think that's also very important.
That's true. And right now we do not have so many good information. So that's why we should spread this good information, even if it's like a small thing. We should spread it and we should show it to the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And having these kind of seminars, webinars with everybody here gives me hope. Thank you so much, guys. Right. Let's go to the second question here from Zoom user. Sorry, I don't know your name, so I'm just going to read that. How is the social media discussion related to climate change looks like in Europe, or Poland in particular? How effective is the activism through social media touch the society there? So this would be a question specifically, for Yulia. She will probably know here. And I did, however, everyone, add an Instagram page from Veronica over there, so you can take a peek later to see what it's really like, or to the YCC website or Instagram account. But now I'll let Yulia answer.
Thank you so much for this question, because it's also really interesting. In Poland, we have day by day, we have bigger amount of climate influencer actually. And they are doing sometimes, like not sometimes, almost in every case, they are doing huge job, because like they are searching information almost from every field that is connected to climate change. And especially you can see that on Instagram, that they have many followers, sometimes even hundreds, thousands of followers. So it means that it's interesting topic for people, yes, that it's important for them to know something about climate change from social media, that they want to see it on their feed, and it's giving hope, but still it's really hard to find good quality information about climate change and then change them so they can be easy to read for regular user of social media. But social media creates this climate blog, something like that, and connect people. I met so many climate activists through social media, and I started for example, we were arguing about something in the internet, of course politely and calmly, but still we were discussing something, and then we met, and then we made a project together. So also it's social media and climate change, and like talking about climate change through social media can connect people, connect activists, and then they can work together and they can try to make a change. So I think it's really important, and it's growing every day. Right now, Facebook maybe not so much, but Instagram and Twitter, these are the most like powerful tools to use to spread awareness about climate change. But at the same time, there are many of fake news, like tons, thousands of hundreds of fake news. And that's why it's so important to check twice what are you reading about in different sources. I had time in my life where I, to like repost something, I had to check it in 5 different sources. Right now it's enough to check in 2 or 3, but I had less than 5, I didn't post that. So yes, it was quite strict, but it's really important, and they are doing great job in Poland. They are spreading awareness, they are teaching people, they are educators. So yes, they are doing great job, and it's a big part of activists. Almost every activist has Instagram account, and he posts about his work, about new projects, about protest and everything. So it's really interesting. But I wanted to ask you, how about Indonesia? Do you have like many climate influencers or ecological influencers, or not yet, maybe?
Okay, good question. Before I answer this from my perspective, I would like to invite anybody from the audience who would like to describe what the landscape of social media is like. Anybody? I'd like to just call on some people, if I may. Can you hear me? Hello? Or Defi?
Hi.
Hello, Defi. Would you like to answer? What does the social media look like in terms of, climate change mitigation or climate change activists in social media? What does it look like here?
Okay, I will explain, or I will try to explain in my perspective. So actually, I follow some Instagram or Instagram page of, like a organization or a youth organization who really always share about the environment, or it's like maybe I can mention some Instagram account or community that always care about climate change, like Ecco, and then there's still many that I can mention one by one. But in Indonesia, social media has a lot of very big impact about sharing about the climate change, and they have a lot of followers, more than 100,000 followers. And I think it's kind of really effective also, because they not only share about what climate change is or more information, they also ask us to join them to do their campaign. And I have followed for maybe more than 5 campaign about climate change, and I think it's a very good idea to share or to ask people to join you to do something in social media, to do something that maybe not only giving information, but do some movement to do something to make or make a difference or about the environment, or maybe ask more people to join your campaign, so we can do something better for our environment. And in Indonesia, we have a lot. And maybe if you guys don't know, you can search in Instagram with some keywords about environment or Ecco. You will find there's a lot of accounts or influencers that share about the climate change and have a movement to help environment from the climate change in Indonesia. Because in Indonesia, we have a lot of people really active in social media, especially on Instagram. And I think this is a good platform if you want to share or you want to ask people to do something to help our environment. And like Ecco, we have our own Instagram account, and it also shares some information. So maybe because in Indonesia we have a lot of social media user and we are addicted in social media, so I think it's a good change to influence, to giving information and education a lot of people. So yeah, maybe it's from my perspective, and thank you very much for giving me opportunity to share.
Okay, thank you very much, Devi. Thank you for giving the perspective and your experiences. I do remember that she mentioned organizations such as Ecco, which I also follow, and they have quite good content over there. There are other organizations, but mostly the content I see are made by these organizations or foundations when it's related to, climate change activism. I'm not so aware yet of, individual influencers, not yet, maybe because I guess Instagram works around this algorithm, right? And I don't know whether or not climate change is an agenda. Do you know what I mean? This is the interesting part, and this is what we have to think about, guys. How many times do you get recommendations about climate change other than, just news that pops up from the BBC or CNN, but specific content about climate change? This is what I see. It doesn't really pop up in the stories, even though I follow Ecco Foundation, of course. Even though I like a lot of the posts from Ecco Foundation and also from the YCC, right? And this is strange for me that I don't get as much recommendations about environment, but I do get a lot about fashion and gossip and etc. Even though I don't really follow that, I get so many. So I'm starting to consider that it's not really an agenda yet by the mass media, and this is concerning for me. So we need to pierce that by making more content, I guess, or mainstream influencers have to make content about that. Those who are already viral should make content about that. They should be forced to, in my opinion, somehow. But yeah, I guess that's perhaps the landscape here in Indonesia. So I'll give it back to Yulia. Would you like to comment on this before I proceed to the next question?
Thank you so much, Naya and Devi, for your side of the story, because I didn't knew that. But one more thing that I wanted to mention: when you are a climate activist or climate influencer or just like regular user of social media and that's interested in climate, you usually are in your own bubble. And it's really hard to get out of this bubble and get to know new person that you can teach something about climate, or you can show them something about climate, or they can show something to you about many different things. So it's also important to remember about that, because sometimes I'm catching myself on thinking, okay, but everyone knows that it's all the time, my whole feed looks like that, but not everyone feeds looks the same. So that's also something important that you should consider if you would think about a career in social media or being climate influencer. So yeah, because I'm usually catching myself on that, so I wanted to mention. But thank you for your perspective. And I think we have 2 more questions. Yes, Naya?
Yes, we do. So we'll answer Virginia's question first, and then Andre wants to deliver his question by open mic. So we'll go to Virginia. Her question is, we do believe that nowadays the news sometimes can't be trusted, or there is still a hoax. Sometimes the strategy from the journalists to attract the society looks like a hoax. How do the activists fix or handle these issues? Does it affect the society's awareness towards the environment and climate change? Okay, interesting question. And we do have about, I guess, 20 minutes to answer these two last questions. So we'll maybe spend about 5 minutes for this one, Yulia.
Okay, thank you. It's also a hard question, and because it's something that I'm seeing every day, that like challenges that we have right now are not easy challenges. And as I said previously on my presentation, we had many different levels, and we cannot just find one solution for that. So actually, according to this question, activists handle this problem differently. Some of them try to fix them. Some of them just, trying not to react, because also in social media, sometimes it's important not to react, because if some post has less views, just leave it like that. Sometimes it's easier and it consumes less energy. Of course, I had opened the question because I don't want to miss a point. Of course, it affects society awareness towards the environment and climate change, but in different ways. Because sometimes, for example, if you want to attract like a part of a society, you have to create clickbait, for example. Yes. And some people read only headlines. So it's also, it depends on your audience. Because if you want to interest your audience and they only read headlines, and you will make a clickbait, they can like spread fake news further and further after that, because we know how clickbaits are made. I'm not working so much with social media. I'm giving the information, and then girls and Veronica and Julka are working on preparing them for so they can be interesting for like a person that is our follower. But I don't know how to answer that simply. It's a topic for another whole presentation, or a whole conversation about that. So yes, the answer is that it affects society, and it depends on a person. It depends on the audience. Everything depends on your Instagram account, or social media account, or way, or journal. It everything depends, because we've got these different niches that we are using to attract different audience. So it's really hard question. Sorry, because I don't think that's an answer that you was waiting for. But unfortunately, I cannot answer it like more clearly. Maybe Veronica, if she could make it today, she would be better in answering this question. But yes, I think I cannot answer that properly.
Okay, it's a very complex question. I do agree. Maybe we can pass it on to Veronica, Julia. But I would like to maybe add a practical element to this, because we do know that there are hoaxes that journalists do. But the ones that I've seen, not necessarily from journalists, but maybe some media that claim to be professional journalists, but they give fake news or non-factual information, or it's misleading. Even some media that tell us, for example, climate change is not real, right? We know about this. They tell us blatantly that climate change, no, it's just something normal, for example. It's not as bad as that or whatever. Or they just get away with the fact that climate change is not real. And some people do believe this, that climate change is not real, that this is something normal that we're going through and it will change back and be magically better. Right? And in this case, the activist has a very complicated role because you have to tell them that yes, it's real, but you don't want to also make them depressed, right? So how do we do this? It's kind of difficult ethical and practical situation. So how do we fix this? I personally, as a member of Ecco, with the Ecco Foundation accounts, but also my personal account, I make 2 posts, one for Ecco Foundation, in a professional setting, but in my own platform where I post something which are at a nuance. Sometimes I post about school, sometimes I post about the environment. And this is important for me. So the practical way, guys, if you want to get with the trend, for example, here in Indonesia, TikTok is a thing, Instagram Reels are a thing, you can incorporate it with this mission. For example, I like to use some of the music that is getting viral in the Reels, and then I just add my own twist and mix environmental facts into the Reels because people like watching Reels. And, maybe these itty bitty details or notions or ideas can be read by people and create a conversation. Okay, so it doesn't have to be all facts, guys, but create a conversation with them. All right, so let's go to the next question by Andre. So I'd like to invite Andre to open his mic. We still do have about, actually 15 minutes. So Andre, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Kak. Well, my question is, as we know together, I have learned a little bit about climate change. That the cause of climate change, one of the causes of climate change is pollution that caused by vehicle and something like that, such as carbon dioxide, methane, and something like that. And as we know together, the big producer of this pollution, like carbon dioxide, methane, and something like that, is the developed country, like such as US, UK, and something like that, right? And those countries are really give a big contribution to make a climate change in our world, right? And I have asked my lecturer why the United Nations didn't what we can say prohibit them, ban them to produce something that can make climate change. And my lecturer said that because they are a big donator for United Nations or something, so they didn't want to get like, or you can say to say, hey, US, you don't need to do like this and something like that. And I think it doesn't seem fair because the developed country did this, but the poor country get the effect, get the risk of what they have done in the past and something like that. So from Miss Julia or the, what we can say, activists, from the climate activists, environment activists, what is the solution for this? What the solution to solve this problem for the country that they don't want to decrease their ego, their ambition to make a climate change getting worse maybe in the future? Because we do believe that we will get the impact together in the future. So what is the solution to solve this problem? Because as we know together, the big country, we cannot like fight them because they have like a big, something like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's really important question because yes, we can see the difference between developing country and country that are already developed. But it's quite hard to change the way that they are working right now. And you after my answer, you may think that I do not know anything, and and I am here from the street. I'm just a stranger that they took and then put here. But actually, there is no perfect solution yet. Right now, we are working with education because. At the end of the day, society is choosing their government, and society and the governments are choosing their representative to, for different events, like, for example, COP or anything like that. And that's why we should start with education of society, because they should try to understand that we have to do that. We have to transform. We have to do this whole thing connected with green transformation. Not only transportation, not only transport, not only energetic sector, but also our daily life. We should remember about that, and we should remember that every transformation requires sacrifice in this case of your energy or your own energy, because sometimes it's not easy to change your habits. Sometimes it would be easier to get to business as usual and still burn coal, still consume more and more, and then, for example, ask developing countries, but why are you destroying your environment? Because always we are humans. We like to find a person that causes this whole mess, but we do not like when it's us. Then it's a problem for us. We have to find someone else. So I think education by social media also, because of course formal education is like a base of all of this, but we should learn our whole life. And that when you are starting to work, for example, it's quite hard to get the knowledge from school, because you are not going to school anymore. You can learn from your kids, but if you don't have kids, what then? And we like it or not, but we are consuming huge amount of information daily from social media. Imagine Instagram, when you're scrolling, and then out of nowhere is 3 hours later, or anything like that. TikTok, huge time consumer. So we should spread awareness right now. But we should also work with governments, because we should talk to them. We should try to show them what we are dealing with every day. We should try to change something. We should suggest the solutions for some things, because it's easy to just stand with a banner, do not burn coal or anything like that. But what instead? We should suggest solutions, and we should think about the solutions, and we should do our research, and we should talk with other people. We should try to criticize our own plans sometimes, to find better way. Getting back to the question, for the solution of this problem, we are looking, I think, since 1980s, like 80s, I think. So yes, it's a long time. It was a long time ago, and we still didn't manage to find any perfect solution, but we are trying. We are working. And this event that we have today means that we are working, and we are working beyond the borders. And we are trying to spread the awareness, and maybe I would that's my wish, actually, and that maybe after some time we can share new technologies and new information, and also share the consequences, and like maybe not share, but take the consequences for our action, and try to work together for a better future for next generations. But yeah, it's important thing that you mentioned, because we should remember about that. But also it's not a good way of working to blame each other all the time. And I'm not trying to tell that developed countries are great because right now they are getting green, they are building windmills, and they are building photovoltaic farms. No, we also did so many mistakes that I cannot even tell right now. But it's time for acting together and not blaming each other what we did wrongly. But it's also important to remember about mistakes of others, to learn on the base of that, not to blame them, to learn, and to do not repeat these mistakes. That's of course only my opinion, and that's also one more time a little bit philosophical answer, and a little bit political answer, and a little bit I one more time I look like I do not know nothing. But I hope it will cause it will cause at the end of today's day, you'll think about that, and it will cause finding new solutions, or at least trying to find new solutions, maybe a higher interest in these cases. So yes, so that would be my answer. I hope it's, as I said, it's not perfect, because but still I think we should work together and try to solve these problems that we have.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer, Yulia. I totally agree with you. I do understand the frustration with the generation and frustration on both ends. One, as a developing country citizen, we sometimes have these thoughts that, well, haven't done much industrialization yet. You're taking our forests, then why do we have to, take this big responsibility to preserve, for example, right? But on the developed nation side, as citizens of, for example, the US, they're really mad also for example, the sins of their forefathers, because they didn't do anything wrong. The younger generation is trying to fix it, but they are still left with the consequences and the blame of their forefathers. So this is a difficult situation also for the younger generation of developed nations. So I do agree, it's easy to have these frustrations, this anxiety, and start to blame, but is it productive to start to blame, right? So this is why the solution would be to gather with these like-minded people on both ends and work together. And this is what we are doing, Ecco with YCC. This is a form of us trying to move towards something more productive, I guess, because there are ideas on both ends, there are experiences on both ends, and both ends can convey what they are feeling and what they are experiencing. And to bring Yulia here is such a great thing, guys, because she gets to experience and see, oh, this is what's happening. Oh, this is the things I've experienced, and I can compare it to what people here are experiencing. And I can say back when I, come back to Poland from Yulia, hey guys, this is the situation over there. And that's what I experienced when I went to Poland, for example. And with this common ground, guys, that you can get when you talk to each other, you can come up with a better comprehensive solution. One of the things that we are doing at Ecco Foundation, for example, is holding these projects in the villages for ecotourism. And we need a lot of things, guys. We need the climate education. We need the training. We need the infrastructure. We need so many things. And intertwined with that, of course, we need funding. And if we think about it ourselves as just one institution, it's going to be very hard. But when two institutions come together, this event, for example, is possible. And imagine if more institutions from a global length, we work together with Asian nations, we work together with Western nations, and we can get this funding. It's the most pragmatic way that we can do, and we can get these resources, these minds, this research, this knowledge from developed nations, and we can work together, right? So this transfer of knowledge, of funds, of technology is going to be the benefit that we can reap as somebody who needs it to preserve what we have. Okay, so yeah, maybe this would be my perspective on the answer for Andre, that we can transcend from this blaming because there's so much great opportunities to work together and actually make something and make a difference. All right. Great.
Thank you.
So, yes, Andre, you want to say something?
I say thank you so much for the answer.
Thank you so much for the question. It's a much needed discussion about that. Thank you. Great. So according to our schedule, we do have some time for one question, which will be answered in the next 9 minutes. So does anyone want to chip in? Okay. Let me check for a moment whether there are any raised hands. Nope, not yet. All right, maybe later in the next second Q&A section, right? So I would like to take this opportunity again to Thank Veronica. Thank you, Julia, also for facilitating the discussion. It was great. And I hereby close the first session. So now I'd like to move on to the second section because I do see here that we have our distinguished speaker in the room. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Mr. Adam Blazowski. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, super. Just a second, I will just close my door and
All
I'm
right.
gonna be with you just in a minute.
Wonderful. Okay. So again, I would like to tell you about who Adam Blazowski is. Again, he's a smart city engineer. He's a publicist, climate activist, co-founder of the FOTA for Climate Foundation and Replanet. A lot of background in the technological aspects, and I think we are going to hear a lot about these things, especially in the energy efficiency area. So we can't wait. So again, welcome, Adam. And how are you today?
Very well. I'm just going to share my screen.
All right. I will ask the
It's almost
operator to...
It's almost 8 o'clock on my side, so you have to excuse me.
Okay. It's all right. Very early in the morning for a Saturday.
I have to share the screen. I think I have to have the rights. No, I have this. All right, I have it. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Time is yours, Adam.
Yes. So as you said, I have been working with energy systems for the last 15 years. And this has been my daily job by improving energy systems in buildings specifically. And just a moment, let me start. Yeah. So of course, I live in Poland. This is Central Europe, and I have been working with energy efficiency most of my life and energy systems, renewable energy, and improving heating systems. Because in Europe, as you know, at least northern, we have it pretty cold, and the buildings needed to be heated, and mostly they're heated with fossil fuels. They're heated with gas, with coal power, and sometimes with heat pumps and electricity. And then if you can optimize this based on weather forecast or by how people use these buildings, you can obviously cut emissions. And I think the software that I was working on has cut maybe 13 million cubic meters of natural gas, which corresponds to also quite a lot of CO2 emissions. So this is something that is really affecting climate in a positive way. But this presentation is more general. It's about how do we reach the zero? How do we decarbonize the energy systems and our infrastructure in a reasonable way without endangering biodiversity? Of course, this is everything from a European perspective. So what I'm going to show you is mainly based on the European countries, because this is what my presentation is based. But maybe some of these things can be interesting also for you. So a little bit about us is we are a FOTA for Climate organization that is an NGO. It's a foundation. We are scientists, activists, specialists, experts, mainly people who are really deeply concerned about climate change. And we want to be evidence-based. We want to talk about these things based on science, based on evidence, scientific papers that we can find. And we have found a niche. Like everything in nature, you need a niche, and we have a niche too. We are a Polish NGO that started to go to Germany, and we started to protest the shutdown of nuclear power plants in Germany. We think it's really a wrong move, bad for biodiversity, bad for the climate. And this is how we became maybe a little bit popular. So we have these polar bears that we show up with, and these polar bears, they represent, of course, the biodiversity that is threatened by climate change. And of course, our climate change is mainly affected because how we get our electricity. So the challenge ahead of us, this is from the IPCC, is of course immense. This is IPCC, how the CO2 emissions need to drop, especially for the Western countries that have managed to emit so much in the past. And of course, the later we do this, the more we have to go to negative. The yellow color is negative emissions. So this means that our children and our grandchildren, instead of building schools and hospitals and kindergartens, they are going to build machines and infrastructure that is going to be removing CO2 from the air. And of course, this is not good for us. We would much rather have hospitals and kindergartens and schools. So, you know, if we want to avoid it, we have to cut emissions really drastically, and this will be really, really, really difficult. So it's not only getting to zero. Getting to zero is not enough. We are going to be needing to cut emissions to get to a stable climate. Maybe we can buy a little bit of time, but with geoengineering. This is a technology that can reduce the amount of energy that gets to the earth, but this is only buying time. It's not a solution. So the challenge is huge. And over the last decades, we didn't really improve our zero emissions. We are still at the same stage. This is getting better a little bit recently, but fossil fuels are still occupying the most of our energy mix. And although we are building a lot of solar, wind, and other technologies, we are still really, really far from reaching the goal. And which of the energy sources are low carbon? This is from IPCC. It's not biomass, it's not natural gas, it's not coal. But it's solar and geothermal and hydropower, nuclear and wind, offshore and onshore. These technologies are indeed low carbon. And this is an example from Europe. How did the European electricity mix look like in 2018? Then we had about 14% in hydropower. We had a lot in wind, 12% in wind. 3% in solar. That's because Europe is not necessarily very well suited for solar energy. A little bit of biomass, a lot of fossil fuels, but you see this red is low carbon nuclear, that is 25% of European grid. And this is a big, big problem because a lot of people in Europe, particularly from the environmental movement, are really focused to kill it, to shut it down. And if we would do this, it would be really detrimental to our climate goals. So we, as Photon for Climate, we think we should keep it. It's 50% of our low carbon energy, 25% of total electricity in Europe. So it's very valuable asset if we really want to protect the climate. And this is on a yearly basis. You see, this is wind and solar, yellow and green in Europe, and gas and coal and hydro, and in the bottom, this is nuclear that is running 24/7 in the basement. So how do European countries look like in terms of emissions from energy? And this chart is very, very interesting because it shows you what are the CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour. So 1 unit of energy, how much CO2 do we emit? Depending on how much do we produce. So the more it's on the right, so countries that produce really a lot of power, a lot of electricity, and how much they emit. And unfortunately, Poland, which is 70% coal, is over here. So Poland is very emissive. Polish electricity is very dirty, regardless of if we have it, if we produce a lot or a little bit. And you will see on the bottom, French is really low emission. Sometimes they produce 40,000 megawatt hour, sometimes they produce 80,000 megawatt hour per hour. But in general, they are in between 50 and 100 CO2 emissions. So France is really in a good position over here. There is Norway, there is Sweden over here. This is Portugal, this is Belgium over here. And this big gray is Germany. So Germany is an example of a country that has a lot of renewable energy, and this is really good. But so when there is sun and when there is wind, they really produce a lot of energy and they have really low emissions. They really go even below 200. But when there is no wind and no solar, Germany quickly goes back to coal, and they are sometimes even worse than Poland. So you can see this is really a scatter plot. It's really scattered everywhere. France is consistently low carbon, and France and Germany is sometimes very low carbon, sometimes really dirty. So IPCC is talking about the 4 model scenarios and what needs to happen to really decarbonize our world. And in all of these scenarios, IPCC says, we are going to need to increase our nuclear capacity. Of course, we are going to build more renewable energy. This is quite obvious. But in all 4 model scenarios, nuclear is growing 150%, 98%, 500%, 400% from what's today. So this is quite clear that we need all sources, all clean, all low carbon technologies that we have on our portfolio to decarbonize: renewable energy efficiency, nuclear, even carbon capture and storage. So IPCC is quite clear that if we can have a technology that allows us to burn fossil fuels and capture the carbon, it's still something that is interesting, and we should try to use it. So this is the exact quote from IPCC. To reach the 1.5 pathways, we need the growth of share in energy derived from low carbon emitting sources, including renewables, nuclear, and fossil fuel CCS. So some people will say, oh no, we only need nuclear. Or some people say, oh no, we only need renewables. That's not true. Neither of them is right. We need everything because the challenge is so big and so huge. So how do we get there? How do we reach these low carbon energy systems? The top photo is from Japan. So I'm going to show you a couple of these charts that show you a daily electricity production chart. And I'm going to show you 4 different countries that have reached or are getting closer to this ideal scenario. So on the top, you will see 400 tons of CO2 per gigawatt hour. There's going to be 150 and 0. So how are we going to get this? Is like Poland. This is like Poland or Germany. You can see this yellow is a lot of solar. So during the day, solar is producing, and coal is going down. But when the solar goes out, coal goes back. And this is currently Poland, Germany, I think also a case for Indonesia, India, all the countries that have a lot of coal and they use it for baseload. So this is typically a way, just by installing a lot of solar power and a little bit of wind, you can get to about 400 tons per gigawatt hour of CO2, which is better than nothing, but obviously not our goal. So this is an example of Germany. I have removed their nuclear power capacity because they want to switch it off by the end of December, but maybe they will change their mind. So you see, there is a lot of wind in Germany. If there is a lot of wind, then the coal goes down. And if the wind dies down, this is December, this is winter. So this is really cold. If the wind dies down, then immediately gas and coal and lignite are going up. So in fact, the fossil fuels are balancing the intermittent renewables, and this is really a case for Germany. Then we move further, 100 tons per gigawatt hour. There we see a lot of wind power, much more wind power is installed, a lot of solar. Coal and gas is still here, but we have pumped hydro, we have some battery storage, we have some basically demand shifting. Demand shifting means that we, in the critical evening hours, maybe we are switching off some freezers, maybe we are switching off some heat pumps, maybe we try to do laundry a little bit earlier during the day. Maybe there are different ways that we can balance the grid in the evening when the sun goes out. So this is already better. And an example is South Australia. South Australia is a country with a lot of renewables, not a country, but a region. It has a lot of wind, a lot of solar, and the orange is gas. And you can see in the evening when the sun goes out and a little bit the wind also is dying down, gas is getting back, and gas is keeping the grid online. When they have a lot of wind, or this is particularly weekend, so low demand, no industry, no work is going on in the weekend, so they don't have a lot of demand for electricity. So when there is a lot of solar and a lot of wind, you can see that they export. But during Thursday afternoon, they are importing. This is the color here for the import. So they are balancing their grid with the others, neighbors. And this is really a case where there's a lot of renewables and gas. Of course, what is very interesting here is you see the price of electricity. This is how it affects this affects people at homes in the long run. So how much they pay for electricity? South Australia electricity is very expensive. And you see when there is a lot of wind and a lot of sun, the price is really very low, sometimes even negative. But here on the weekend, they have too much, they have to export, the price is negative. But look here, when there is not enough wind and not enough solar, and gas is winning, they have really high electricity prices, especially now that we have an energy crisis. And when there is no wind and there is no solar, the price is really, really high because gas is expensive. Next, we have a country that introduces a little bit of nuclear power, which runs in the base load and it runs in non-stop. And this eats up from coal. So we still have a lot of renewables, we still have a lot of sun and wind and solar, but we are able to kill a lot of coal and gas from nuclear in the bottom by running 25. And this is an example of Finland, which still has a lot of coal, here, brown, but they have this stable baseload of nuclear power. This is March 2022, so this is this year when they started to switch off the new reactor Olkiluoto. It's going to cover their needs completely together with the rest. So right now in March they were importing a lot, but now they are going to be self-sufficient. So you can see that there is a base load production that is continuing all the time. And this is good. This is good for low emissions. And of course, we have the ideal case where the fossil fuels are completely eliminated and they just serve a little bit of purpose just to help the grid, the system to survive the evening when the sun goes down, and batteries and piped hydro and demand shifting and everything else is helping out. And this would be the case of France, of course, which has about 50%, 60% of nuclear, and then they have renewables, a little bit of gas. Of course, this presentation was done before the war, which now changed a lot of things in Europe, and especially the energy prices. And the French, they have their own problems right now because they don't have enough capacity. So this is an ideal example, but we are far, far from an ideal world. So now, when we talk about decarbonization, and we have to start talking about the biodiversity, because some of these projects really do affect biodiversity and the land around us. And that does not mean we should not build them, but it means we have to balance what is good for nature and what is good for energy systems. And now there is always a trade-off. There is always a little bit of this is going to cost us something else. There is never a free lunch. It does not exist. There is no free lunch. And when talking about energy systems and biodiversity, you always make trade-offs. Okay, we are going to destroy a little bit of nature here by building this infrastructure. And what can we get? Oh, we are going to get a really good energy without CO2. So you have to balance this out, and not always, it's not always easy to make these decisions. In the 70s, there was a book, Small is Beautiful, by Schumacher, Economists as if People Mattered. And this book really changed people's thinking that small is beautiful, that we need small installations and we need a little bit of solar panels, a little bit of wind, and that you don't need coal and then you don't need gas. And this has shaped the thinking of the people in Europe for decades. And now that we actually start building these installations, it appears that it's not so small and it's not so beautiful sometimes. Morocco in Africa is building a solar power farm this big as Paris. And we see that if we have the distributed energy system, if we have a distributed energy sources, they are also distributed in the way they affect nature. That does not mean we don't have to build them, but we have to be very conscious about this. And this debate is going to happen in every country that is building new low carbon energy sources. They are getting cheaper, renewables are getting cheaper, and this is good news. This is definitely something that we see, and this is good because this energy is becoming more affordable. But at least for the energy debate in the European continent, still 70% is biomass, and biomass is mostly burned trees for heating. So of course the solar and wind, they play a role. This is primary energy. This is not electricity. This is primary energy. So this means also heating, for example. So when you see posters and when you see a lot of debates about what Europe is doing, then you always see the wind turbines and you always see the PV that are built everywhere. But still, 70% of primary energy comes from biomass. And in many cases, this is not good. Because this biomass is just forests that are planted, they reach their age, then they are cut and either burned completely or wood is used for production and the waste is burned. And if you know the biology, you can do it a little bit. You can do it for your home, but you cannot heat a city with this amount of biomass, because if you take something away from the forest, you should put something back in. And if you just remove, then the ecosystem is going to be depleted and the soil is going to get depleted sooner or later. So it's not sustainable if it's done in too much scale. Yeah. So biomass in Europe is really, really big. And not all of this is really sustainable. This is a big problem. And a lot of organizations, a lot of people, they want to increase it even further. They want 100% renewable economy, which will be, in our opinion, really devastating for the environment. Denmark is a country that is going for 100% renewables in 2035, which is a great goal and great ambition, but they burn a lot of trees. And recently there was a letter from Estonia, another European country, that said, please don't burn our forests, because Denmark is importing a lot of wood biomass pellets from Estonia. And Estonia is losing forests. And it's nice for Denmark because they have this ambitious goal and they want to be 100% renewable, but they consider biomass, wood forest energy as zero carbon, which is not true. It's a loophole in the law that is allowing them to do this, but it's really not low carbon, and it's not healthy for the environment. And we see there is a huge increase in biomass demand. There is, for material use, for animal feed, for plant-based seafood. This is okay, but energy is really growing. And in Europe, about half of our renewable energy in 2016 was biomass. This is getting a little bit better. So you see here, Denmark, they have these huge cogeneration plants. They generate electricity and heat for the cities for the winter, but they also burn forests inside of these installations. So we really have to start talking about heating our cities without burning forests. This is a photo from Ukraine biomass industry. You can just see forests being cut and logged and transferred for biomass. This is really bad for Ukraine and for the climate also. And in case of Denmark, they import also a lot of wood chips and pellets from America, and they cut the forest in America and they travel 8,000 to 4,000 miles and burn it in Denmark. And even European Academic Science Advisory Council has said this is nonsense. This is not sustainable. This cannot go on. So basically, heating our cities with biomass is really a problem. And this is a problem in the European legislation, that serious mismatches continue between science and policy in forest bioenergy. So some people say, oh, we have to go 100% renewable bioenergy. And then the people who are conservation specialists, they say, hey, wait, stop, we don't have that many forests. This is not sustainable. We cannot go on like this. So this is one case. And another case is food or fuel debate. This is biofuels and bioenergy that is really specifically planted. And I think this is also a case that is debated in Indonesia. Plants that are specifically planted just for energy instead of for food. And especially now that we have a food crisis, we are going to have a food crisis because of the war and inflation. Growing food and burning it is really questionable thing to do. We should have food for eating, and we should be, because we have alternatives for energy, and we don't really have alternatives for food. In case of Germany, about 7% of land mass in Germany is used for energy crops. 7% of the country is used for energy crops. This is just growing. This is monoculture, corn, just to get biodiesel or biofuel or bioenergy one way or another. This is not food, this is fuel. And this is also controversial because, again, we don't have alternatives for food, we have alternatives for energy. So wasting 7% of your land mass, imagine how much land sparing you could do if we could fulfill these energy needs by something else. We could return 7% of country to nature. That would be amazing. So there was a paper from Australia a key role of nuclear energy in global biodiversity conservation. I really highly recommend this paper by Brook and Bradshaw, where they say, guys, if we're really serious about biodiversity, we have to include nuclear because it's very dense. It's a small area. It's not really big. It produces a lot of energy. Finland has built one reactor, and this reactor is going to produce as much energy as all wind turbines of Denmark. Good that we have both. It's good that we have wind turbines in Denmark. It's good that we have nuclear in Finland. But you can imagine a 2 or 3 hectare installation in Finland is producing as much energy as all wind turbines of Denmark. And this is obviously a good deal for nature. So a lot of environmentalists and a lot of people who are related to biodiversity and biodiversity protection are changing their mind. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, we were really skeptical of nuclear. And now, not too bad, all things considered. Of course, nuclear has disadvantages. It's expensive. People are afraid of it. It's difficult to build these projects. And I know Indonesia has an unfinished project in Bataan. There are such cases in Austria also. They also built a power plant and never switched it on. So instead, in every country where this happens, you see coal coming up and gas coming up instead of this nuclear that was not finished. So a lot of environmental people are changing their mind right now, and we see that it has advantages. It doesn't solve every problem. It's not the only solution, but it certainly has some advantages. So what are the conclusions? One conclusion is that, yeah, our world is on fire. And if people are really insisting as we still don't need nuclear, then our landscape is more and more going to look like this, because the sources that are energy dilute, they are going to take a lot of land. And of course, you don't need that much. Maybe 2, 3, 4% of your country can be covered with solar panels and wind turbines. But there is a caveat in here. And the caveat is that people do not like to have power plants behind their window. They don't want to live close to power plants in many areas, at least in Europe. And they are protesting. They don't want to have a solar farm very close. They don't want to have a wind turbine very close. They don't want to have a nuclear power plant very close. And when people are protesting, then the government is trying to build in other places. And these other places, preferably without people. And the places without people are the places where there is a lot of nature and a lot of the biodiversity. So we are going to have in the next decade a lot of these conflicts of building new energy infrastructure in empty or unpopulated areas that are very rich in biodiversity. But biodiversity and animals are not protesting. They cannot stage a protest. They cannot pay the politician. They cannot block the investment. So there is going to be a conflict between building new infrastructure in energy and people who live already there. Another conclusion is that we see a lot of fossil fuel companies like Shell, Total, they really go for renewable energy, and they are committed to solar energy, but they are also committed to natural gas. A lot of these big energies, they want to go like South Australia. They want to go for a lot of wind, a lot of solar, and a lot of gas. And wind and solar is okay, but gas, not so much, especially now that it's really, really expensive. And Europe and Asia are competing between each other for the gas from America and from countries because of the war. And the prices are insane. And in the end, the electricity is very, very expensive, because the electricity from renewables is cheap. When you have solar, when you have wind, it's really cheap because it's for free. The wind is for free, the solar is for free. You only need to build the installation. But when they go down, you have expensive gas that you have to burn. And of course, a lot of people say, yeah, we're going to have batteries and and storage of energy. No, we are not going to have batteries. They are nowhere near the amount of energy storage that we need. They are going to have usage. In Australia, they have some batteries installed. They're going to be used to keep the grid stable, to manage the grid. People are going to install it in their homes if they are very rich and they want to have this, but they are not going to manage, batteries cannot manage a megapolis like Tokyo. Tokyo is 24 million people. It consumes as much electricity as the whole Poland, the whole country of Poland, which is 36 million people. Tokyo is consuming the same amount of electricity. And when there is typhoon or when there is a cyclone, there is no way that renewable energy can maintain a city like Tokyo. And no batteries are going to manage this. And a city like Tokyo needs to be powered non-stop. The cities cannot lose electricity, and humans, they die if they don't have electricity, and there is no option that we are going to just live on wind and solar alone, and the batteries are not going to be there. So gas is always needed. So this is why the big companies are really happy to be committed to natural gas, because they know the batteries are not going to get there, and they're going to have limited uses, so they know they can make a lot of money with gas, if only they can manage to block nuclear. And you can see these big energy companies are very often really against nuclear power. They much prefer natural gas because it's easier to build. It's very easy. You just buy it in another country, you ship it, and you very quickly build the power plant, and you burn it, and you're happy. So nuclear is more difficult. And this is probably the most important slide of the whole presentation, is how do we judge different energy sources in the system? How do we manage to classify them? Yeah? And of course, there are every energy source in the energy system can be applicated, can be defined as in one of these three types. There are energy sources and technologies that are fuel saving. This is wind and solar. Fuel saving means when there is wind, when there is solar, we are not burning coal, we are not burning gas. This is good. This is really good, because we just can put a lot of wind and solar, and we are cutting the need for coal and gas. And these are the green types of fuels. They are other sources of energy that are fast burst that they quickly start and quickly shut down. This, for example, is gas. Natural gas is really good to balance renewables. So if you don't have enough wind, if you don't have enough solar, you can quickly start a gas power plant. It's expensive, but it can quickly come in and keep your energy system stable and your electricity flowing. So these fast bursts are really elastic, it's flexible. Yeah? And the last type of electricity sources is firm low carbon. Firm, that means you can depend on it. For example, nuclear, for geothermal, for example, hydro. These are energy sources that are low carbon, but they are firm. You can rely on them. What does it mean that energy source is firm? It means that I know how much it's going to produce in 3 months at 6 o'clock. If I know how much my power plant is going to produce in 3 months at 6 o'clock, it means it's firm because I can rely on it. With solar and wind, I have no idea. I have no idea how much my solar and wind infrastructure is going to produce in 3 months. I know how much it will produce tomorrow, but I don't know how much it will produce in 3 months. So it's not firm, but it's fuel saving. And the biggest advantage, the most important element of this presentation is probably this picture, because this is taken from the PowerPoint, from the paper from Jenkins. This is also quoted by IPCC. Jenkins says, and he really showed it with good modeling, that if you exclude the firm low carbon, so no hydro, no nuclear, no geothermal, if you exclude it, then your decarbonization is really expensive. So the more you go to the zero, from 200, 150, then CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour, if you want to go to zero, your costs are exploding. But if you can include nuclear, geothermal, and hydro, then the costs of decarbonizations are really managed. It's manageable. Yeah? So it is something that can be done. So we have to include all. We need solar, we need wind, we need nuclear, geothermal, if possible. If somebody is living on a volcano, then geothermal is probably an easy thing to do. And hydro, whatever, we are not destroying too much nature. And fast burst also, a little bit of elastic, flexible is also needed. So yeah. So a lot of people complain about nuclear and waste from nuclear power plants, but this is really a non-debate, because right now we are storing all the waste from fossil fuels in our atmosphere for everybody, and we're destroying our climate. And nuclear waste is very easy to store in these kind of caskets, and later they can be put in the ground. Finland is building such a storage. So it's not really an issue. It's the best kind of waste for the environment, for biodiversity, because it's small, it's 100% separated from the environment, and we can store it underground for 1,000, 2,000 years easily without access to water. Geology, if you ask a geologist, they know a lot of formations that have not had any water for the last 2 million years. So it's not really a big problem to do this. Finland is going to show how to do this. And at the same time, we burn fossil fuels and we put everything in the atmosphere, and we are dumping this. We are changing the bonds of CO2 in the atmosphere and changing our weather. And of course, the decision to phase out nuclear in Germany and Japan, it has huge costs. And there is a paper from Grecha from 2019 that he estimates that about 16,000 premature deaths and 1.2 billion tons of CO2 emissions have happened because Japan and Germany have decided to switch off nuclear power. Japan is now going back to nuclear because they realize the gas is so expensive and it's just too difficult to do it without. Germany is considering this decision, and we really hope they are going to go back to nuclear, and instead they are not going to import Russian gas, which would be really, really good. So what's about the future? The future is not so optimistic. The IEA is forecasting hydro and growth in nuclear, a huge growth in renewables, but also growth in bioenergy, and unfortunately, huge growth in natural gas. So the challenge is enormous. It's really big, and we are not yet in the position where I would say we are in good situation to decarbonize. So this has been all from the presentation. I think we can have some questions right now, if that would be possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. It was a really impressive, very interesting presentation with a lot of facts that we don't have, a challenge to digest, but very interesting nonetheless. So we are now going to open a Q&A section. If anybody would like to ask, you are welcome to write in the chat box below, or if you would like to ask directly, please do so and activate your mic. So I'll give a moment to let the audience comment.
While we wait for questions, I can tell you a little bit about Replanet. This is our new organization that we have started. This is a European-wide organization that is a coalition of different NGOs and foundations. I heard you talked about what happens when there is 2 organizations. We have 6 or 7 right now. And Replanet is going to be all about science and saving the world in a pragmatic way. And Replanet is all about liberating nature, giving room and space for nature through technology, and elevating humanity. So it's not enough that we just keep people poor and save nature. This is not enough. We have to both liberate nature and make room for it and preserve what's valuable, but we also need to elevate humanity from poverty. We have to give people electricity, we have to give people healthcare, they need to have jobs. And these 2 goals, they have to be pragmatic. We have to be pragmatic. So we want to be the first such a big organization that wants to talk at the same time about liberating nature and elevating humanity. And you can see what we do and the activities that we do. This is a new brand. This is a new thing that we started. And I highly recommend you to follow, because we are going to do interesting things together. And that's something for the future. All right, do we have questions?
Okay, thank you for showing us that. Noted, liberating nature, elevating humanity. All right. Once again, I would like to give a chance to the audience. If not, I do have a question here that has been DM'd to me. So I will copy paste it in the chat below. So you can read it, Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Please wait a moment. Okay, here it is. How do we tackle prejudice to nuclear, and what are the misconceptions? For example, is it really safe? So perhaps in a context where a lot of, for example, here in Indonesia, they are afraid of nuclear, but how would you answer this, Adam?
Mm-hmm. Just I'll try to find. I'm sharing the screen. Share again. Yes. Can you see my screen? So there is
Yes.
this website. There is this website, Our World in Data, and they have really good data about everything. What are the safest and cleanest sources of energy? And nuclear is really one of the safest in historically speaking. We didn't know about this before. 50 years, 40 years ago, people didn't know how safe it was. We do now, because now we do have data. So in case of safety, there is nothing worse than brown coal. Brown coal is killing 32 people per terawatt hour. Coal is killing 24 people per terawatt hour. Oil is killing people. Biomass is also killing people. Gas is killing people. Hydropower also can be quite dangerous. We all know the Banqiao Dam failure in China that has killed like 100,000 people. So hydropower is absolutely not really that safe compared to wind and solar and nuclear. So the actual death rates from nuclear are really, really, really low. Of course, we had 2 big accidents in Chernobyl. The latest United Nations figures, they show that Chernobyl has killed about less than 200 people. And mostly these were people that were immediately during the accident. A lot of the Russian, the Soviet relocations of people were not necessary. They didn't have to leave. So nuclear does not kill, but the fear of nuclear is killing. So being afraid of nuclear is dangerous. And in Fukushima, nobody was really affected seriously by the radiation in Fukushima. But a lot of people suffered from unnecessary relocations. Yeah? So science needs to be there. Science is a way for us to understand and manage the risks. How do you tackle this being afraid of nuclear? Well, first of all, there are a lot of anti-nuclear organizations that make a lot of money out of this fear. And these organizations that are anti-nuclear, they are not really concerned about climate. So they should not be experts on this. They just want to start the fear and make people afraid because they can have money from it. So these anti-nuclear organizations are not really experts. And second, people are afraid of this because they don't know why. They didn't know for many years why nuclear was built and why it was created. They didn't know why it was built. And the moment we understand why we need it, the fear is very often much gone. We need it because it's a critical climate infrastructure. We need these powerful power plants because our people need electricity, our people need jobs, our people need healthcare, and we need to do this without CO2 emissions. This is why we need nuclear and wind and solar. And the moment people understand why we need them, that there is really no alternative. And if we don't do this, we are going to pay much, much, much more and burn much, much more coal. Then people understand, oh, okay, now I know, okay, there is a purpose. It's not just to make money. It's not just to make the big projects and take bribes and so on. Of course, sometimes this happens too, and you have to have a strong state to prevent this. But really, a nuclear power plant is good for the climate. It's really tackle prejudice. You have to show them why it's needed. What's the purpose?
Okay, wonderful answer. And thank you for sharing this article, Adam. Thank you so much. Another question here before I go to Yulia to also extend the discussion. We have a lot of earthquakes in Indonesia. Some people are concerned. Would it still be safe, Adam?
This is something that needs to be taken into account and needs to be seriously considered. And engineering has solutions for these kind of things. So engineers, they know how to handle these things. They know how to calculate it. They know how to make installations stable and able to shut down in a proper way. And Japan is a good example of this. Unfortunately, in the case of Fukushima, they were not able to prevent problems with the flood and tsunami. But this is like airplanes. Airplanes used to be very dangerous. The airplanes used to crash very often, but we learned from it. We were learning, drawing lessons and making them more and more safe. And this is also the case with nuclear power, which is internationally supervised. You cannot build a nuclear power plant without international supervision. This is, unless you're North Korea. And they don't have a nuclear power plant. They have a reactor, but they don't produce electricity with it. So international supervision is making sure that you have all these requirements, that you are fulfilling your expectations up to the norms and legal standards that should be there. And this is good because this international supervision is important. And engineers do have solutions for earthquakes. You can have installation that is robust and is able to shut down and has a sufficient backup and the backup scenario for earthquakes thing. But of course, it's not easy. It's not something that can be done easily. But climate change is real, and biodiversity crisis is real, and we are out of easy choices. We do not have easy solutions anymore. We have to do the tough things. We have to do the difficult things. We have to take risks, because the risk of unmitigated climate change is huge. It's amazing, and it's going to cost us a lot of lives and energy. So we have to do difficult things, and we have engineers, we have talented experts who can do this in the right way.
That's great. That's more reassuring, I hope, for the people who asked this question. And now I would like to continue to Julia to extend the discussion. So on to you.
Naya, I would like to tell you a little bit, to remind you about my presentation about biodiversity. You can see how it's tightly connected with energy sector. And from Adam's presentation, Adam, please do not leave us yet. Because I'm
still with you. I'm still with you.
Okay. I thought that you are, changing device or something. But I would like to ask, because right now in Europe we've got pretty unusual situation, because there is a war in Ukraine, and Ukraine has many nuclear reactors, and some people may be concerned how, in terms of war, nuclear reactors are working, if they are working, and what is happening right now in Ukraine. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
So this is really first time in the history where a working nuclear power plant has been taken over by a hostile force. So Russian army has entered Energodar. Energodar is a city next to a power plant, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and it's the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe. And they have taken this in the first days of the war. So it was something obviously very valuable for them. Very quickly, they took it over. This is a crime on the international stage. So the international law says you cannot have any kind of hostile activities in the nuclear power plant vicinity. So you shouldn't do this. So this is obviously breaking the international law by the Russian force. What happened since then? The nuclear power plant is working. It is supplying electricity. Because it's supplying electricity to nearby cities. And the Russians, they know very, very well that if this stops, they will have a huge problem with the population and with cities that are not without power. Human cities without electricity, they need about 3 days and they become jungle. So there is no option. There is no way that there can be a political decision to switch off nuclear power that can stop supplying electricity to cities. So obviously the Russians have taken this electricity power plant because they see this as an asset. This is an asset for negotiations. If there is going to some peace negotiation in the future, they're going to play this card. Yeah. So they this is the reason why they took it. The plant itself is safe in a sense that it really would take very, very concentrated effort to make real danger for the nearby people. And of course, the people who would be most affected are the soldiers who are on the plant. So they would be really playing with their own lives if they wanted to do something nasty to the plant. So the power plant is valuable only if it is functioning and working and supplying electricity to nearby cities. So they don't Even right now, it's working. I don't know if it's working full speed, might be at 50%, but it is working. And what's interesting, it's working with the European frequency. It's that the grid is synchronized. Right after the war, the Ukrainians have synchronized their grid with Europe. And the Russian, the occupied nuclear power plant is working with the synchronicity of European grid, because this is how energy systems are working. So although they have it, they still supply electricity to Ukraine, and they still work in our frequency because there is no alternative. They cannot do without. The plant itself has a containment. The reactors, they have containment buildings. They are very difficult to penetrate. Even if somebody would penetrate them, they would have to be very, very methodical to do something serious to the plant itself. And it's if somebody would like to do a radiation incident or anything else, there are much more easier way to do this. So there is really no, apart from scaring people, there is really no way to put in danger the whole continent or Europe or other countries without really putting yourself in a much bigger danger. So of course it is a crime, and we will see how this develops. But at the same time, Ukraine has lost 90% of offshore wind turbines. They have lost 30% of solar panels. So energy, doesn't matter if it's nuclear or anything else, energy is victim to war, and it's not like you can live without this. You need both. You need all of this, and currently, it is what's going on. There is a crime, but there has not been any radiation incident or anything like this because Russia doesn't need it, and Ukraine, of course, doesn't need it either.
Thank you so much for this answer. And also, according to our previous webinar, some of our fears are just because lack of knowledge, and information can be our weapon to live in this world, to know the truth, and to be more confident about the future. So what I would like to tell you, you should check informations, as I said previously. You should search different sources of information, and I think Adam showed you a few really good sources of information, and I think that may be a part of solution that we should use right now. Okay, thank you so much for answer once again. And Naya, maybe you would like to take a stage.
Okay, amazing. Right, so this was a very fruitful discussion, very interesting, and it touches a lot of issues, sociocultural issues, very much scientific facts that are involved in there. And again, it might take a while for the audience also to digest everything, but once understood, I really do think that this knowledge is indeed powerful in our efforts to understand what we can do, the significant things that we can do to mitigate climate change. And based on all the materials that we have discussed here via Adam, I just want to make a short conclusion. And my short conclusion would be, based on the questions also, that things are not always as they seem. We need to fact check. We need to look at all the facts in a more objective way, and then we can make a better solution. And we also have to consider all these aspects of, for example, biodiversity, and also how does it actually work? This data on climate change, on how we can decarbonize the planet, and then we can get a perspective on how our previous assumptions were maybe not as sound as we thought they were. And we also need to combat some of these dangerous maybe assumptions of the past without certain basis for facts. And we will find that we can suddenly flip them. We can flip the narrative, and this is something that's powerful. And our perception and our prejudice about nuclear is not, is not as it should seem. And we see that here, Adam has proposed a lot of ideas here about, based on these facts, about how it's actually safe. Actually, it's producing less waste, and it can be so effective, even more effective than, hydroelectric power or solar power in certain ways and certain dimensions. And have a look at that paper that Adam has shared in the presentation. And I see here that Adam has also shared his email in the chat.
Twitter,
and remember,
Twitter.
Yes,
If you have questions, if you want
sorry.
to talk, you can ask me on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook, but feel free to ask. And I'm really open to critique. I'm not the kind of person that will be offended if somebody says, "Oh no, you're right, you're wrong. It's not the way." We have to change our mind, and I have changed my mind many times in life. And this is what science is beautiful about science, that you do change your mind. If you're wrong, you change your mind. So I'm absolutely happy when this happens. So if you think you don't agree with me, or you think something should be better, please feel free, tell me. I'm really open to discussions. So feel free to talk.
Amazing. That's the beauty of science. Wonderful. So
Yes.
follow him on Twitter, Adam Blazhowski.
Yeah.
So look at that. Blazhowski for
Please,
Indonesian.
that's Polish.
Yes, because W in Indonesian is a what sound. So if he says Blazhowski, or if I say that, it's a W, everyone. So check it out on Twitter.
It even sounds like this in Polish, so we have something in common.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
So happy. Okay, Adam,
Okay.
thank you very much for the
See
amazing
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we have we have come to the end of this session over here. It was a pleasure to have you. And again, for any further information, you can check out his Twitter. You can check out the website that he has shared. Remember to check out Replanet, very interesting website, and you will find more insights there. So I would love to, we still have 2 minutes before the presentation section, before the wording section, but I would love to go to Julia. Any final notes to conclude the session here?
I would like to one more time encourage you to searching for information on your own after this seminar, after this event, because it's really important to talk with each other. And even though sometimes we do not agree, as just like Adam said, we have to talk, we have to try to change our minds. For example, about energy sector, about biodiversity, about things like that, because that's the way how we can find the solution. Because we've got so many problems that we should solve, but still there is a hope, because as you can see, we are here together, all of us, and it means that for us that's an important topic. And also I would like to thank you for being today with us, and for listening to these presentations, to these lectures, and for your questions, because they were really interesting, and they were sometimes just on point. Even this good that sometimes it was hard to answer them, especially for me, and questions about social media. But yeah, I think we have many possibilities of cooperation. We have many chances to work together, and we can combat the crisis that we have right now, and many more crises on the way.
Great, that's an optimistic note, as we discussed in Veronica's presentation. Amazing. And with that kind of hope, remember that we can still make a difference, everyone. Lovely. So that concludes actually all of the seminars for today. And now we would like to just show you and present through this forum our certificate of appreciation for our two speakers here today. So I would like to please ask the the operator here to display the certificates for Veronica and for Adam, and for the other speakers as well. So again, we thank the first speaker, Ms. Julia Galosh, for her presentation on biodiversity. Thank you very much. And the next speaker?
Julia, please open your cam. You would like to take like a screenshot for its certificate.
Julia.
Wait a moment.
Okay.
Not yet. Okay.
All right.
3, 2, 1. Okay.
Oh, it has that sound effect. Amazing. All right. So Yulia, once again, thank you very much, and would like to give appreciation also for the next speaker who is here today, for Veronica Gaida. Oh, sorry, this was there's a little typo in the certificate, unfortunately. So we'll fix that later. Yeah, so it's Veronica Gaida, and then also to Mr. Adam Blazowski. Mr. Adam, thank you very much. Unfortunately, he has something to do, very pressing matters. He has to leave immediately as soon as he has finished his session. But again, we say thank you very much to Mr. Adam, to Veronica, to Yulia, and of course also to Tiwi, our other speaker here today, that we met in the morning. All right. So everybody, on behalf of Ecco as moderator also here today for this online session, I would like to thank the audience for being with us here until the end, for watching this very interesting, very beneficial seminar. And I hope to see you all in another session in the future where we can talk about even more exciting events. Thank you so much. And now we are going to go on to the next part of this Ecco Idea program, in which we are now the match up and also motions for the debate. So I hereby close the seminar section, in which you can use a lot of this important information for the debate that's upcoming tomorrow. And I will give the floor to the chair, Iqbal, to moderate for the session. Time is yours, Iqbal.
Everyone, wait a moment.
Okay, so I'd like to also ask for just a little break so that he can prepare and finalize the motions for today. And I hope that everyone who's representing for each team for tomorrow is here present, because Iqbal will tell you about the technicalities, Iqbal will tell you about the matchup, and also the motions. So the finalizations for everything is going to be discussed here. Right. So please give us just a few minutes.